Hey, folks.
Hey,
I'm Dustin
whoever.
Siggins with Proven Media Solutions. And with me, I have Renee and Will. And today we're going to talk about how a little bit of irony on my part. We're doing a show on LinkedIn. I've grown my business on LinkedIn, but I'll link about how social media isn't the be all and end all, even though a lot of clients think it is. So we're going to talk about how to help clients see the other tools, marketing and branding tools that are available, especially when if everybody's on social media maybe try to live somewhere else some of the time. So, Renee, Will, please go ahead and introduce yourselves.
Well,
I was going to say ladies first, but yeah, my name is Will Greenblatt. I'm a recovering child actor, I like to call myself, which basically means I started acting when I was 7 years old and worked consistently all the way through to theater school doing film and TV, and then thought I would
Wow.
become a real actor by getting some theatrical training and then making a career of it. And right before I went to theater school, my family had a bit of a tragedy. My younger brother passed away, and it was this sort of horrible, life-changing event, which sent me kind of around the world trying to figure shit out. But eventually, I landed back in Canada after having discovered teaching and entrepreneurship, and I dedicated my time to being a public speaking coach and a storytelling coach, helping other people figure out what their story is and speak from a place of authenticity and clarity. So taking what I learned as a performer, but trying to use that to be more authentic versus more performative. So recovering validation addict who uses try to use my validation addiction for good, but be more of a real person these days.
such a great intro. I love it every time I hear it. It's always a little different. I am Renee. I say that, am I a recovering journalist? Not really. I long to go back to journalism a lot of the time because what I really care about are stories, telling stories, hearing people's stories, and uh, helping people really uncover the true stories to bring that real authenticity and honesty to their work and to their presence online. So, yeah, left journalism, got into content marketing via way of a food blog, was my first foray into the online content marketing world. I learned how to build audiences on all the social media channels. If there's a social media channel, I've been on it and I have grown an audience on it, either for myself or for a brand. And the same, I really don't pay attention to these LinkedIn algorithm changes or any of the algorithm changes that much. You kind of have to know a little bit of what's working and, the rules that you need to abide by on each platform. But ultimately, what I find resonates across platforms, across time that is timeless, is honest, authentic stories that speak to some portion of the universal human condition, that evoke emotion, that are honest, that are real, that are relatable, that have human characters that we want to root for, and that is what I teach people to develop, so they can market their business, build their brand, and live happily ever after. All those things.
A lot of the what we're going to talk about today, again, how social media may be overrated for a lot of people trying to build a brand or a lot of organizations trying to build a brand. Anyone who has any questions or insights, please bring them to the comments. I will be looking for those. I think Will is as well. He seems more eager for the questions than I do. One of the things we want to distinguish, and Renee, you did this very well in our prep call a little bit ago, was the difference between if you're trying to, I'm going to call it commodity versus service businesses. You made a different kind of distinction. But when it comes to trying to sell a thing, social media maybe is often the best place to go because people click, they can buy. Versus when you're trying to build a relationship and getting that high dollar complex sales, who cares how many impressions you have? It matters maybe more if they're on your newsletter or we do PR. So they're reading the trade publication versus if your post went viral, it probably reached a lot of the wrong people. So I'd love for you to dive a little bit into that because this whole episode we're doing was actually your idea. So I'd love for you to set the stage for everybody a little
Can you reframe the question for me?
bit. Sure. Um,
I can go in so many directions with this. So
sure. So why is social media so popular? Why are we saying it's maybe not the only game in town that people should be aware of? And what was the differentiation you made earlier between essentially commodity-based businesses and service and relationship-based businesses?
yeah. Okay. Well, I don't know that I want to answer the question of why is social media so popular, because that is a long, nuanced answer, how we've
Fair
gotten to where
enough.
we are with social media. But
Fair enough.
maybe why we feel like it is so important as part of marketing our businesses and what people gravitate towards. It seems like a lot of people want to start on social media because it is the most visible. And it seems like maybe the easiest place to enter, right?
Right.
I'll just pick a platform where my audience is. Hopefully, you've asked yourself that question and done the research to find out if your audience is actually on the platform that you've chosen to create content on. Because some people miss that step sometimes. Um, okay, are they here? Are they paying attention? And then, I can just start posting, creating content, right? And building an audience and creating visibility for my business and then driving leads or customers. And that is, first of all, uh, so much harder said than done. And second of all, it's not that, yeah, it's not that simple. It does take a little strategy to really do social media well, but also it takes recognition, getting back to your question of whether what you need is a traffic-based approach to your marketing
That was it.
or,
Traffic. Yes.
or a relationship-based
Mhm.
approach to your marketing.
Right.
So what we see and who we hear from and the gurus that we learn from, most of them ultimately have content creation businesses. They're content creators, and what they rely on is volume, right? And scale to sell low ticket items. A lot
Mhm.
of people that I think all three of us work with, and a lot of people that are on the platform, are actually experts in an area that have service based businesses that probably need fewer clients at a higher ticket.
Mhm.
Social media isn't necessarily the place to find those people. It needs to be a component because, as I like to think of it, your social media, your LinkedIn, either wherever you are, but the purposes of this conversation, we're on LinkedIn, it's your new website. People are rarely going to your website anymore. They're going to your LinkedIn to check out, who you are, where you've worked, how you present yourself. And ideally you have some content on there that shows how you think, what you value, what problem you solve, who you solve it for, and your unique process or approach to solving that problem. And then also whether or not you're the type of person that they want to work with. Like Will jokes all the time. He's including on his post promoting this today. He's a bit irreverent, and he curses a
Right.
lot. And I think he's just the most fun and wonderful human. But that could turn somebody off, who's
And
It's
like
has.
not
that.
my brand.
And it has, right? And that is just a good signal that that's not the type of person Will wants to work with anyway. They're just not aligned in how they want to show up and be in the world. And so that's a positive thing, right? You want to be that sort of magnetic personality that attracts the right people and repels the wrong ones. But you really need to be clear on what kind of business you have, right? So more effective ways of drumming up that business, if you are maybe need fewer clients at a higher ticket, is what Will teaches, and some of the things that
Right.
I do. Speaking, showing up in getting earned media. You working with people like Destin to get media placement, to get in
Right.
podcasts. Do your own webinars and workshops and things like we're doing right now. Pick a panel of experts that you want to go deep on a topic with, and then use that content also, or repurpose that content to show your expertise in these different ways. But that's the relationship building approach. And they both actually, I think people probably think, well, that takes time and effort. It's not any more time and effort than creating content for social media and posting consistently,
And
right?
probably this budget, because you don't have to put an ad budget behind it in order to reach all those large swaths of people too.
Yeah. So that's I'll stop there.
And Will, if you want to jump in and talk about kind of your differentiation here.
Yeah, I would say, I resisted social media for so long as a human being, but also as a business owner, just because I was like, oh, this is so fake and I don't know how to show up as myself on here. I started posting on LinkedIn frequently out of necessity during COVID because I was like, where I used to go get all my
Mm.
clients from these monthly, there's a place called Startup Drinks in Toronto, organized by a guy called Craig Major. And every month there was this room full of like 60 to 70 people right in my target audience. I used to work with tech founders and accelerators, and sometimes VCs, like they'd bring me into their portfolio companies. I was teaching their teaching founders how to pitch, basically. And so every week there was just a room full of 75 people, and Craig would just be like, "Hey, do you want to speak?" Because we were buddies, and I would be like, "Great." And I would do this little 5 minute spiel where I would do this like big, silly theatrical warm up that got the whole room going right before they stepped up to pitch. And inevitably, 6 or 7 people would come up to me after. One or two of them would turn into clients, or it would turn into a relationship with an accelerator. It was so easy, I felt like before COVID, to just go to a live event, do my thing, find a way to get on stage or, volunteer to be on stage. That's how all my clients and gigs seem to be happening, as well as referrals, which is always the thing no one talks about because you can't control it.
Hmm.
But yeah, and then COVID hit, so I started posting. And I've never had this crazy steep growth trajectory that I can, then talk about and try to build a course around and sell. Because I'm no good at going viral. I don't, I mean, I probably could do it if I really tried, but I've never been good at like wanting to do it or wanting to figure it out or wanting to try and try again and try again. And I noticed that I just seemed to feel much better when I just was like, I'm just going to talk to people who kind of know me or feel like they know me already, or I feel like they want to know me, rather than trying to make myself this palatable version of myself that could appeal to like 150,000 people. I'm just like, we're just going to try to be more myself, a bit less, bit kind of coarser and crasser and irreverent, as Renee says. This is a very polite way of saying it. Um, and yeah, it felt like it feels better, but it also seems to lead to better results where people will sign up for a mid-tier ticket thing without ever really meeting me. Um,
Hmm.
I just had a guy sign up for my cohort. I do something called the Signature Workshop cohort, where we work through 8 weeks of going from not really knowing how to break into the speaking industry to having a signature workshop that's based off your story that you can do again and again. And we just basically been talking through LinkedIn. I think we spent like 5 minutes on a webinar once. And he said, "I want to join your cohort. I saw about it on LinkedIn." I said, "Do you want to have a chat?" He said, "Fuck it, let's
Oh,
go."
ready.
Yeah, ready to go. That's the kind of thing that I feel like is worth more than having a ton of followers. I'm getting there, and it would definitely help my speaking efforts if I could point to this massive number and
Right.
say, "Well, look," as Renee I think was saying before our call. But in terms of the engine of my business, which is working with coaches and consultants and speakers to develop the signature workshop, I think the trust-based thing. I also do a lot of webinars that a lot of people come to and spend a lot of time with me that way. I have the newsletter. So yeah, I think it's the trust-based thing that I go for, even when I am on this social media, which is supposed to be a traffic-based platform.
Well, and to your point, right? I post at least once a month about how LinkedIn has benefited my business, right? We're hosting a show through LinkedIn. LinkedIn grew my business 75% last year. We doubled the size of our team. Um, but at the same time, so many, I remember one person in particular we met through LinkedIn, but then I went to DC, which I hardly ever do. Went in for a client, went to this prospect's office. She introduced me to two partners at her firm. And that's how we got the business was the actual handshake, was the
Mm,
conversation about their actual pain points. But even then, it wasn't the posting I did. It was me proactively reaching out to this person through a DM in a way that wasn't pitch slapping, that was
mm.
actually genuine tied to their pain points and creating the relationship. And so I do want to tie back to something. Renee, you've talked a lot about newsletters. Will, I'm sure you have as well, but I know I've been following Renee for almost 2 years now. I think I cold DM'd you about co-authoring that piece in September of or August of 24. So it's been
Yep.
about a year and a half. And
That is the best kind of DM, cold DM. Hey, I have something to give you
it's
that's going
true. It was
to
so
make
much
you
fun.
look good, and you're not going to have to do really any of the work. Would you like to do this together? Like, absolutely
Which
100%.
is
Yeah, no
basically the post
question.
you put up promoting the piece.
Yeah.
So just for context, everyone, I was brand new to LinkedIn. I'd hired a consultant, Molly Johnson, to help me build my voice on there. And I was kind of nervous because I'm a talker, but not necessarily on LinkedIn, and how do I stand out? I'm
Yeah.
just a PR guy. I'm not an AI expert. I'm not any of those big things that seem to stand out. And I'd been following Renee for a while. I pinged her and I said, "Hey, you don't know me. I got this idea. I have a piece I want to write on this subject. I think it ties to your brand in this way. I think we can get it published in any one of these 3 or 4 places that I've been published at before. Do you want to do it?" And she said yes. So I mean that was social media, but it was really just reaching out and providing a way to add value. So what I would like to dive into before we start just praising each other, everyone drops off. Well, I'd like you to dial a little bit into how your take a couple of minutes, kind of sell everyone on what you do and how, yeah, social media is part of your marketing. I'm sure you tell your clients use social media, but how does getting in front of people and speaking differ from social media? Renee, I'll ask you to do the same thing, and then I'll share a couple of stories about trying to show clients that yes, social media is part of your strategy, but it can also be overrated.
Mm.
So I see some version of this post every few months on LinkedIn from someone, and it's meant in a nice way, but it's something like, if you only got 5,000 impressions on your post, don't feel bad, or probably 500, I think is more likely.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, because I'm sure, I mean, I love when I get 5,000. If you only get 500 impressions on your post, don't feel bad. Imagine a room full of 500 people
Right.
listening to you talk. And then everyone
Mhm.
goes, great reframe, valuable perspective shift. And I'm just like, that's bullshit. It does not, I'm sorry, Justin, that's
Language,
my third
language.
curse
That's
word. Okay, I
four.
have get
That's
one
four
more.
in
Oh, that's
60
four
seconds.
already?
I warned you.
Man, okay. The 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 attention, the conferred authority that people assume just seeing you on a stage is completely different than
Yeah.
some
Mhm.
jackanape posting on LinkedIn, which, no offense, anyone can do. I mean, anyone can get up on a stage, but
Yeah.
like to actually hold an audience
Mm.
and deliver something valuable in a
Mhm.
way where they go, man, I remember that person, and they,
Mhm.
didn't drop their coffee and spill it all over themselves. They actually stood up there, did the thing, and really made sense and changed my mind and gave me something to work on and let me
Mhm.
in a bit on their story. Those people, you can make a fan for life with a talk. I have done that
Mhm.
several times where people
Mhm.
have come back to me years later and been like, I saw you speak once. And
Mhm.
recently, like the planets have aligned where I now need a public speaking coach, or I want somebody to speak at this event. And you were the first person I thought of.
Mhm.
And just because they saw me on a stage once, it's a way different type of impression. So yes, you have to do a good job, and you have to be memorable, but the relationship and the type of respect and authority and connection and trust that you gain from being on a stage is just
Y-
completely different than social media. So that's why I advocate, go to local meetups, events,
Yeah.
and just, even if it's an open pitch where anyone can say it, say your spiel for 30 seconds with the mic in your hand and all the eyes on you, and you never know who's going to hear it and be like, hey, I'm going to go talk to you after. Go to networking events, and if you can volunteer to speak on a stage for free, if you're just getting started, do it, because
Yeah.
that will lead to paid opportunities down the road, at least way faster than if you never do it.
Can I
And I'd
ask you?
argue that the same thing could happen on a platform like LinkedIn, but it takes a lot more repeated effort. So you could have something that really speaks to somebody. And I get DMs like this all the time, like, thank you for writing that. And then it's a fan that is starting to develop, right? But
Right.
now I have to do a lot more work on social media to show up consistently in that way. Not consistently in terms of like every day, but consistently in terms of like that type of
Right. That specific
that
pain
that
point that you're
that
only posting
yeah.
3 times a month.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, not even just addressing their pain point, but from my perspective, from my greater point of view of the approach that I'm taking to this and my why, really underneath it all. That's the through line that I think is really important in terms of thinking about consistency in your content. And then it can take, we talked about it at the beginning of this call, 2 years for that person who resonated with that one thing to see me consistently show up in that way to say, I am
Mhm.
ready to, hire you, purchase your thing, take the next action, actually work with you. So it is a much longer uh, relationship arc than someone seeing you on a stage and delivering it that way. So it's both of them take time, right? But you have to show up a lot more with LinkedIn or with social media content to be able to have the same impact. What do you want to say, Will?
Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you, Renee, but
Very good.
I just wanted to say, like, it is, as you said, part of the strategy. Like, if I
Yeah.
never showed up on LinkedIn, my business would be so much worse. But like, a lot of this stuff is just reminding people you exist.
Yeah.
But if you're looking for like the biggest impact, I would say, obviously very biased, but I would say commanding the front of a room is probably the heaviest impact thing you could do. Maybe a
Mm-hmm.
book is better, like maybe somebody reading your whole book.
Hmm.
To me, I think face and voice and body language are maybe a bit more
Right.
intimate in that way, although it depends on the
It
skill
depends on the
of
type
the
of work.
writer. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it depends on the quality of the writer and how deep they go, maybe in personal stuff. Like I've read books that have changed my life and made me feel like I know the author for sure. But yeah, in terms of convincing somebody that you're worth handing many thousands of dollars to just again show up and probably just talk at people, like that's what we do. We like
Right.
get in rooms with people and make noises with our face. That's what I do. I mean, like I there's slightly more to it than that, but not much. And so like in order to convince them, like that's it. And if I can do that decently, we also have a bias towards people who are good at talking. And so if you can show up, talk
Sure.
well, people assume you can solve nuclear physics problems even when you can't.
Well, communication is the number one issue that creates all issues in anything that we do. So that makes sense. I think that checks out.
So, well, I want to dial into
We're
something
all
you
of our
said.
problems.
Oh, sorry, Renee. I didn't mean to cut you off. I broke my 2 second rule. So, well, when you're talking about what you do specifically, someone might say, well, you're public speaking, you're a coach, etc. But how many business owners end up wanting to speak at a conference? They want to be on a podcast. You're right. I mean, speaking up in front of somebody for 30 seconds. I mean, my wife, literally, there's two photos from our wedding where we walked into the reception hall and there's 128 people there at our reception. And she looks at me and you can see the picture. And she goes, they're all staring at us. I said, they're supposed to. And I swear to God, when she looked the other way, you could see the other photo of her terrified face. I had to wrap her elbow extra tight so she wouldn't like dive under a table to avoid everyone looking at her. She just said I'm so dramatic from the other room. But it's true, like getting up to that 30 seconds, if you want to become a CEO who wants to be on a major stage or be on a major podcast, do any kind of speaking, whether it's earned media or some other type. How important is the practice that you're talking about, even if it's free, in order to prepare you for those sort of opportunities that aren't just posting on social media?
Yeah, I can't possibly count how many times. So I just yeah, you kind of mentioned something that I call the demonstrator's advantage. I'm not good at naming things, but this is called the
Oh, they're fun.
demonstrator's advantage, where and like most of my things, it's a half-baked theory. But Renee also alluded to it earlier. It's like a LinkedIn person who's telling you, like, hey, these hooks go viral on LinkedIn because they went viral for me. It's like, but you post about how to go viral on LinkedIn. Your total addressable market is this entire platform.
Yeah.
I talk about doing, taxes for yoga businesses in New Mexico. We have different markets, right? Like, it's not the same game. So I
Sure.
do try to always be transparent about that. Is like, yes, if I'm talking about getting on stage and the importance of that, I am a public speaker. So I have that advantage where it's like it makes sense for my business, but also I was an actor for 23 years or something before I ever got on stage. Like I started when I was 7 years old and I went to theater school for 3 years of training and experience. So
Yeah.
like, and then even then when I started, I was fucking sorry, I was
No,
terrified.
you're
I was
out. You're out of
absolutely
swear words.
terrified. And I still to this day get stage fright, but stage fright, social anxiety, imposter syndromes are all the same thing. And it's a dysregulated nervous system when all eyes are on you or some eyes are on you to not sound like a blithering idiot. And that is a
Mhm.
lifelong battle. So the moment when the little green light turns on, or when they say action, or when it's your cue and you come out on stage, whatever that is, to overcome the fear and to try to ground yourself into being as much like yourself as possible while still interesting to listen to. Remember your points, make it clear. Like, yeah, you need to spend years getting good at that. So that's why I just say start now. Like, you're not going to become a $50,000 keynote speaker by speaking at 3 local meetups, but you will get there faster than if you don't start doing that.
Well, and here's another argument for using social media platforms or any online platform to build that muscle as well, because it's the same fears that you talked about with speaking well are the
Mhm.
things that I hear consistently with people that are just trying to use content to market their business, right? So, and they're writing it, they're not putting their face on there, they have time to edit, and still all those fears are present. And I think, and it's easy for me to say as a journalist with, 20 something years of writing experience, to do it more intuitively, right? And then I went to teach it and to kind of break down the mechanics of it. You got to, like we were saying, understand the rules of how this work, and then it's just practice. And social media gives you a place to practice that's pretty low stakes. People feel like it's high stakes. People feel like, well, what if this goes viral and then I'm taken out of context and then my credibility is shattered and I'm canceled? Low likelihood of that happening
Yeah.
if what you are writing about is honest and from a place of integrity and expertise and your lived experience. It's hard for people to argue that. Also, no one's paying that much attention to you. Maybe if you're a big public figure who has a lot at stake and on the line, a lot of eyeballs on you, like more of a risk, but that's not a risk for the majority of us. So yeah, just it's similar and just a different application, but same underlying fear, I think, for all of us, is that fear of visibility. And it's like we want two things at the same time. We want visibility and we don't want to be seen. It's safer to be in obscurity. And those things are constantly in conflict with each other. And it's just one of those, you just have to, the more you practice, it's like exposure therapy. The more you do it, the more you can at least know how you can handle the outcome, right? It's
Yeah.
almost like trusting yourself, learning how to trust yourself to deal with whatever the outcome is. Um, but I feel like, we're talking about a lot about public speaking as a great avenue, and it is, but I don't think it is a lot of people don't want that, right? It's not the only option for a lot of us. And other ways to go beyond social media to grow your business. And this is a big one it's partnerships, right? Is using other people's audiences, is borrowing other people's audiences. So that is like, Dustin co-authoring an article with me when you were starting out, right? So you were borrowing my audience to get
Yep.
visibility and you were giving me something in return. Anytime I've ever started a new social media account on any platform, that has always been my go-to approach. Partnerships, partnerships, partnerships with brands. I always start, how can we're at the same level or maybe someone slightly above you, but I offer something completely different than you do, but we speak to the same target audience. We're just approaching it from two different angles. Right, so Phil and I were to do something together. We're both speaking to, service-based solopreneurs who want to build their brands online, but he's approaching it. He's helping them, develop workshops in speaking. I'm helping them like really think through a content strategy and marketing system. Together, we complement each other in what we offer, and they need both. I have a business strategist partner who's constantly sending me work after she's done the core business strategy. She's like, now you need a marketing strategy. You need to talk to Renee. Or they'll come to me and they're like, I'm ready to have a marketing strategy. And I'm like, your business model is all messed up. You need to go back there. I send her back to Carrie, right? So those types of relationships and partnerships, that's where you do intentional referrals. So not just relying on referrals from past clients that you've worked with, but referrals from your sphere of influence. As I wish I need to give her credit, but there's this woman who talks all about how to build just a referral-based business. It's her whole thing, and she thinks about getting how to form partnerships with people that serve a similar audience, but do different things. And that has been a really fruitful approach for me to get clients beyond social media.
Well, and that also works if you're trying to build a complex, multi-million dollar organization with 50 or 60 employees, because at the end of the day, if you're at a conference,
Mm-hmm.
make sure that if you're sending out a press release about something you're doing at the conference, make sure you use the big names who are there. Partner
Yep,
with them if they don't know you're partnering with them.
absolutely.
Or when we work with clients that are putting out a press release, we make sure, okay, well, how many other players are even part of the tent of the squid of the operation? How many other names can we pull in so it's being spread on social, so it's being spread through the LLM, so it's on their website and
Mm.
their newsletter, hitting as many tools as possible through that partnership approach. Because at the end of the day, again, what we do is earn media. media outlets are desperate for content that is high quality, that speaks to their audience, that they don't have to do much work on. And
Yeah.
so you're actually creating a partnership there as well at every step of that process. And so I won't, I'm going to brag a little bit. We produced a phenomenal, heartbreaking piece about a particular healthcare issue that is in front of a congressional committee this week. And it was heartbreaking to write this piece. And part of the reason one of the top tier outlets accepted it was because they worked with us before. Sure, we get edits back fast, but the editor said it's exceptionally well written, which made it easier to accept.
Hmm.
This editor wanted a reason to accept it, and we had solved some pain points and made sure it had to be less edited and able to be turned around on the timeline that needed to be turned around on. We created a partnership with the editor by accident.
Mm.
And so I think to your point, Renee, whether it's at a corporate level and you're buying a company, you both can announce it, or whether it's on a personal brand level where I reached out to you and said, can we co-author this together?
Mm.
And, partnerships are a phenomenal way through social media and anything else to really, move your brand forward.
Yeah.
Well, anything to add?
Yeah, well, just on this partnership thing, I think I came from not business, I guess, as you guys did. Technically, you came from journalism. Does you consider that, not being business?
Correct. But
Yeah.
I cheated
Yeah.
though. My father's my business partner, and he founded 5 companies.
Okay. Yeah.
And he fought professional mixed martial arts at 47, so he's all about process and moving the ball forward. So I kind of cheated.
You cheated, but then you had a business partner that you can't mess with, otherwise he can,
Well,
put you
correct,
in
correct.
a
He's
put you
60
in a
seconds,
show.
but still
Yeah,
beat me
yeah,
down. So,
right. Yeah. But yeah, like I didn't know. It's so funny. I didn't know any of this stuff. I always thought of entrepreneurship as this thing that I could never do. Like it didn't even occur to me. I just didn't know any entrepreneurs. I only knew artists pretty much growing up. Like
oh
my
my
family
God.
were theater artists. I was an actor. Like that was most of our friend group. Like I had, some friends, their parents did other things, but basically like the theater, TV, writers, poets, musicians, that was kind of my community. A lot of great to that, a lot of, not so great necessarily. Like I learned a lot about emotional intelligence and emotions and really helpful stuff, but also not. I'm a terrible with money and math. That's
Hmm.
one thing. But yeah, just to know that like these things are even possible, or to have the kind of like, yeah, there's no playbook basically. It's like you can do whatever you want. You can approach someone and be like, hey, do you want to do this thing together? Even if they never heard of it before. If it's a good idea, it's a good idea, and there's nothing wrong with it. Jeff, who may or may not be on this call, Jeff Abrason, his whole thing is that he's grown on LinkedIn. I know we're supposed to talk about off LinkedIn, but I think this would also apply to sales as well and different types of marketing. He just goes and says to these people he admires, is he just goes like, do you want to do a podcast together, or do you want to do this thing? And so he reaches out to all these people, and then now he has this roster of like buddies, basically friends, who are all these massive names on LinkedIn. And he didn't try to sell them anything. He didn't try to be their coach. He didn't try to sell them a service. He just approached them kind of like as a friend slash, let's do this as a collaborator. And that's been massive, absolutely massive for him. So I think this idea of, yeah, looking for partnerships, collaborators, people you can work with rather than just, your next score, your
Ab-
next kill, whatever salespeople say.
Do they say
Well,
that?
I heard some
yes,
salespeople say kill.
some do.
Yeah.
But you're right, Will. At the end of the day, my business partner, who I mentioned earlier, is my father. He's mostly been in the commodity space, in keeping, sports marketing, ran a restaurant in his college years. Now he's founded a franchise gutter cleaning company, right? So it's 6,000 customers for the one
Small business
franchise.
empire.
Small business empire. But he uses terrestrial radio. His entire business is built on $90,000 a year of hysterical and dad joke style ads. Like on the roof, there rose such a clatter. It was the Cape Cod gutter monkeys putting up a ladder. And that is yes, they have a social
Uh,
media account. Yes, they have the podcast, but it's the $90,000 a year they spend on radio advertising that
uh,
drives the sale. I looked it up in preparation for this show. 9 out of 10 American adults listen to radio. They might not do it on the radio station, but they're listening to radio. Radio advertising works. getting
Well,
a radio
it
interview.
it works
Well,
depending on who your
for some
target
people,
audience is
yes,
and
I'm
where they
sorry.
are. So what I
Ha-
understand from your dad understands who his audience is, what
Correct.
they resonate with, and where they're
And
hanging
where they
out.
hang out,
You know,
their
on my
sandbox.
intake form for clients, this is one of the biggest questions I ask them. I'm like, okay, tell me about your client, not just what you know about their pain point or problem, but what that keeps them up at night, what they deeply care
Yep.
about, the impact they want to have in the world, and where are they
Yep.
hanging out? What news are they reading?
Right.
What LinkedIn, what social media channels do they engage with? And most people
Mhm.
are like, I don't know, I never thought of that. Like
Right.
these are the
No,
things
it's
we need to
so
know before
important.
we spin our wheels creating
Right.
content in the wrong channels where our audience will never
Correct.
be, right?
And we have 6 minutes until Will has to jump. So, Will, I tell you, you're about to talk, but I just want everyone to know. Please ask if you have any questions. Jump in. There've been a lot of fun comments, but if we can teach you anything specific, please ask it. We have about 6 minutes, but Will has to go be a dad.
Yes, I have to read Gerald and Piggy at my daughter's preschool
I
with my wife.
love Gerald and
Gerald and
That's
Piggy.
Piggy is great.
great.
The
Me and my
best.
wife are going to
I
do
don't
a
know what
double
that
back.
is, but I like the idea.
Yeah. But yeah, I just wanted to say one last piece though about Renee, and certainly not to contradict you at all because I think it's so important to do that. But I also think there's an additional thing you can think of as you look to identify your target market, which is what is your message to the world? And if you
Absolutely.
kind of, yeah, really get in touch with that, and then you can kind of
Mhm.
just put it out there, and then, people can kind of tell you who your audience is by hearing your message.
Mhm.
That's how I built my business by accident because I didn't know to do any of the stuff you're talking about, Renee. I had no idea how to like find an ICP. I just started putting out there like, hey, my co-founder and I are actors, and we teach acting skills to people who need to be better public speakers. And
Mhm.
what better way to get better at public speaking than get an actor to teach you? Was kind of our whole thesis.
Mm,
And we had no idea who we were going to talk to. And then just very quickly, it became clear at that stage in my business that it was entrepreneurs and it was corporate leaders. And I had sort of two
yep.
sides to the business, but like it was just so clear entrepreneurs wanted our stuff, specifically tech founders who were raising money. And then that became my
Mhm.
niche for like 5 years
Yeah.
before I became completely disillusioned with not only the VC system in general, but like, tech in general.
Yeah.
That's a whole other story. But so I just want to say, like, there is this sort of artist's way where you just kind of go,
Completely.
I've got something to say and I'm going to put it out there. And then the people who it's for, will find it and give me ideas of who my audience could be that I never maybe thought of.
I could not agree more. I
Yeah.
think the process always has to start that way. It
Yeah.
always should start there before starting with audience because I think that's more sustainable.
Yeah.
Because you could create a whole business and a whole messaging campaign and everything around a target audience that you want to reach, and then find out 6 months into it that you actually have no interest in working with that target
Yeah.
audience. And it's not, it's because it's not, it's, yes, it's like the core you start, it's the start with why, right? It's this, the
Yeah.
start with the why and the within. Absolutely. But also, it can be, I think it depends on if you have already business coming in from other sources, you have a lot of room to play and find that
Yeah.
audience too. Um,
Right.
it kind of depends on, again, where you are and your stage of business, what type of business you have, and if you do have a defined audience, sometimes you just don't know enough about them before going out and doing your marketing. So it sort of depends. It's a case by case
Yeah.
and on which approach you take. Not everybody has, time to sort of discover that audience. I
Sure.
agree that I think that's the more fun path, that's for sure. That's the better path for some of us.
And
Uh,
I also think that, it depends also on your credibility because if you're serving people who do what you do,
mhm. Yeah,
great,
right. So much
good.
easier.
Don't
Linear
even
path.
talk to them. Just, like,
Yeah,
Right.
or talk
Just
to
post on
them.
LinkedIn.
Yeah, yeah,
yeah. Just
or
dig
talk to
deep.
them, at your, country club or wherever you guys hang out. But if you're serving, so I teach a lot of coaches and consultants how to break into the corporate space with like the signature workshop, which leads to the longer term relationship with a corporation or an
Mhm.
enterprise. And some people are talking to sales reps and they've never been in sales, or they're talking to leaders and they've never occupied a high
Mhm.
position in corporate. It's nice if you have and you have sort of instant credibility, but a lot of times you don't. But you can still teach them something because you're a
Right.
meditation coach, or you're a communication coach, or you're a storytelling coach, or you are a performance mindset coach, and you have something to offer that you can get a really really nice lucrative retainer or cohort based kind of contract with a corporation. But then you have to, yeah, you have to talk to them a lot and figure out their problems in their language.
Mm.
But to make them remember you and to have your message really resonate, I believe it has to be grounded in your story. So I teach
I
something called,
completely agree.
yeah, the
Yeah.
3 act origin story, which is, and I try to tell this on LinkedIn. I tell it to every um, new audience that I meet is start in childhood, tell people, give people a snapshot of where you come from, and then maybe some inciting incident or key moment in your life that kind of indicates the person you would become. Then focus on one major turning point that kind of took you from one path to your current path, and then maybe the crystallization of the moment where you decided to focus on the work that you do now and sort of integrate everything you've been through into your guiding, what I call the big idea for your signature workshop. Like, what is the big thing you want to talk about, your main message, and figure out the story that helps that make sense and helps people go, I totally know why Dustin believes that, earned media is so powerful, or I totally understand why Renee talks about a relationship based audience building. And I've heard Renee's story, and it makes so much sense when she tells me her story, why relationships mean so much to her. So I always say that to people, like, even if your story doesn't include this credibility piece of you working at the same job title that your audience works in, they still will really be impacted and they will remember and it will resonate if they hear your story.
To that point, when I started the company, our tagline was "We get you published," and a third of our audience. I went from being in the political space to being in the B2B space because I didn't have a White House resume. I didn't have that Senate resume. I didn't have what I can. My first agency I've ever worked at is this one. I've been doing it for almost 8 years. It took me years to understand that it doesn't really matter. I thought it mattered so much more.
Mm,
And about a year into the business, I heard this lawyer stand up and say, "I grow businesses." And I thought, that sounds so much more sophisticated than we put you in the press. We changed it a little bit. I thought, oh, that sounds so much more impressive. So I changed it. We help businesses grow. And my business partner said to me, "How many businesses have you grown?" I said, "I'm growing my first one." "How many times have you been placed in the press, Dustin?" 3,000 times. Use that number. It's way more impressive.
Yeah.
And to your point, Will, if you can speak to that experience, but over time create that differentiation in some small way. I'm a PR guy. My audience is PR people. Why should they hire me? I'm not an AI guy. I'm not that. They should hire us because we do fast work that gets the narrative through the noise, but also we understand the business side of it. I understand that they have a client to serve. And so we spend extra time understanding the business model that their client is in because we're not just PR flags. And I think that little bit of difference, being raised by a business owner, getting that business degree, really helps us stand out because we're not just writing press releases and sending pitches. And so, and again, you can't just say that on social media. That can only be developed with the handshake, the Zoom call, and things off of social media. So you have to jump. I just saw you look over and probably say
My
that
wife and my daughter are off
they're waiting
screen
for
waving
you.
at me, telling me to
So
go. This was such a pleasure,
this was
Dustin
fun.
and
Well, it was
Renee,
nice
as
to meet
always.
you. I never met you
Yes.
until today. Speaking
Yeah.
of building relationships. So thanks, Will. And thanks to Will's family for being patient.
Thanks. Bye.
Renee, good to see you again.